Hey everyone, I'm Taryn Barker. This is the Little Butcher SVK show. Today we're going to be cutting 2 roast cuts because apparently summer's fading away and we are moving into fall. So stay tuned. We will be right back. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to dive right in. We're going to start by working on a bottom flat, outside flat, bottom round, whatever you want to call it. We are going to start just by trimming this up. We're going to take all of the fat and gristle off of the top of this cut. I have underneath my table a waste bin, and then I also have a couple bins set aside here for pieces that I might come back to later and trim up a little bit. We, of course, want to save anything we can when we're doing our own butchery for grinding. You want to make sure you have a plan for your grinding meats. You should be doing burgers. You should be doing meatballs now that it's fall, soups, bolognese. So anything that you can think of for your trimmings, that's so important when we start doing the whole animal or the whole piece butchery instead of buying your stuff already trimmed and ready. Got to have a plan for that. So we're trimming here still. So I got most of the fat and gristle off of here, these little bits. We want to just trim mostly everything off. So that's looking pretty good. And I'm going to come, there's this big side strap here of connective tissue that for sure has to come off. Very tough. It's not going to be a good eating experience for your customer at all. So I'm going to kind of start my knife in about 1/3 of the way. We're going to angle it up slightly towards the gristle and slowly cut down. And then I'm going to come back following the other way. So again, I can put this piece in my little trim bucket. I can come back to it after and just get any good meat off of it. I'm going to do one more follow through here because there's just a little bit left on. We don't want any of this left on for your customer's eating experience. Okay, so that looks pretty good now. We're mostly cleaned up on the top. Now I'm going to turn it around one more time. So we actually have on this cut, the outside flat, 2 grain structures. So it might be a little hard to see there, but we have a grain structure kind of running this way. And we have this little side muscle where the grain structure actually turns in a different direction. Best for you, if you were doing food service and cooking this as a roast, to remove this little section so that when you're ready to slice it after it's been cooked, you can just slice all the way down. You don't have to worry about turning your knife halfway or anything. So you can see there's a big piece of gristle in the middle here. We're going to take our knife and we're going to kind of push the meat more so than slicing through it. I want to push the meat away from this piece of gristle or connective tissue here, leaving most of it on my bigger piece. And then we can kind of slice right at the bottom once we get down to the bottom there. So I'm left with this little triangular piece here. This is great for stew. And I have also seen people make some minute steaks out of it or like chicken fried steaks out of it. So I'll put this off to the side for now. And then we're going to clean this piece of connective tissue gristle here right off as well, because again, that's not going to give your customer any kind of satisfaction when they are eating it. They will not enjoy that. All right, so most common uses, I would say, for the outside flat would be roasting. and then would also be stew meats and grinds. So it's not a super exciting cut, but instead of getting the inside around, which can be a bit of work to also trim up and can also be a bit more expensive at certain times of the year, this is absolutely a great option to consider if the price point is right, because it's really not that hard to trim up. So it's looking pretty good now. I'm going to flip it over. We have a nice fat cap on here. I'm just going to look for any extra thick spots. So right here, it's looking a little bit thick to me. We're going to trim that up a little bit. And if you're new to butchery or new to cutting meat, less is more to begin with, definitely. I would take a little bit off at a time because you can't put it back on again, of course. So taking less off at the beginning until you get more confident, until you get used to the pieces that you're working with. Then you can start going a little faster, taking a little bit more off in one go, and be confident that you're still going to leave at least a bit of that on there for the roasting. Okay, so she's looking pretty good. I'm also just going to look for any kind of dark spots, any discolored spots, anything that just like won't present well to the customer. There's a little bit in there if you can see. So we're just removing anything that we wouldn't want to serve. And she's looking great. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and tie her up. So butcher's not too hard to do. Definitely check YouTube. I'm sure there are a ton of videos there that you can watch, and honestly, it just takes practice. Practice. I've been doing this for about 12 years now, so I hope I can get a good knot going in a decent amount of time. But if you can't quite get the butcher's knot sorted, really any knot you can do, you just want it to be snug. You don't want it to be so tight that you're tearing through the meat, but you do want it to be nice and snug. And this will help make the roast into more of an even shape. So we're going to tuck any little side bits in that are kind of sticking out here a little bit. Once we get this here, it'll kind of all be nice and even. So that's the reason why, or the main reason why we'd want to be tying up a roast like this. To get a nice even cook on it. So the outside round does also have a little bit more of a tight muscle structure. So you do want to make sure that you're watching the cooking temperatures while you're cooking it. And the more even the roast is, the easier that'll be. So I'm just going to keep tying it, probably just one more string on here until we get to this part in the roast. You can see that kind of starts to taper down a little bit. Again, that's not going to make a nice even roast, so it's not going to cook as well for you. You'll end up with very, very well done and dried out beef on that end. So instead, I'd rather cut it off and be able to use it for something like stew or to grind. So we'll cut that off because there it definitely tapers in the meat. So this one then we'll trim off all the fat. And then we'll cube it up so that you could do, just a nice classic beef stew. Or how about a beautiful pot pie with some braised beef in it? You got a good brewery around you. Lots of pies are doing like Guinness pies, but with their local brews in it. So that's always a good option for something other than just plain old stew. Or I don't know, some sort of Polish dish, borscht, I think, or so I'm also just going to take a smidgen off of the other end here too because it's not even. And same thing, I trim that up and turn that into stew. So here we have a beautiful roast. Looks quite nice. I'd say the last thing that we could spend some time doing would be cutting some thin, kind of like minute steaks off of here. Something you could test out with maybe doing like a chicken fried steak with that. I did a couple the other day just to test them out, pounding them out nice and thin. Try something new, do a chicken fried steak with some chicken skins in your bread mix or something. Awesome. So that's the outside flat. We're going to take a break and we will be right back.
These are the most challenging times your restaurant has ever faced. Can you relate to this? Your restaurant is just not making enough money. Your staff are friendly, but they're just not selling. Costs are rising and expenses are just killing you. Now, imagine if a few simple tweaks could increase your profit. Imagine having a dream team staff doubling your sales. Imagine the look on your own face watching your bank account grow. Well, all the tools you need are at restaurantrockstars.com.
All right, guys, we're back again here. So now we are going to move on to trimming the brisket. So this is definitely kind of the king of the barbecue, they say. This cut would be used for sure for smoking. Most of the time it's for smoking. You could definitely also use it for some other things. So I'm going to start by trimming it up. I'm going to flip it onto the bottom side, actually. And we're going to start by removing kind of any excess fat or gristle on the bottom. It's definitely okay to leave a little bit. Some of this is so thin that it's just going to render out as you slow cook it. It is a longer cooking time, so you have that leeway to leave a little bit more, little bits of nice fat there. But the bigger parts, we definitely want to trim. Okay, so that's pretty good. So then we also just have this one really big strip of fat here. It's probably almost 2 inches thick. And I'm definitely, when I'm doing brisket, feeling it a lot. I'm using my fingers to feel how thick the fat is, and then I can judge how much I want to trim off. So you can kind of see I've almost even like pulled it up here. Oh, it's so much fat. So I'm going to stick my knife right in and take out a big chunk. Very confident that I'm not going to do any damage by taking up this whole big chunk of fat. All right, so please keep this. Do not throw this away. Make beef tallow. I use beef tallow at home. Unfortunately, I can't do a lot of cooking in my butcher shop, but at home I use it to cook almost everything. Any kind of rendered fats, beef tallow, pork lard, etc. They all work beautifully for cooking things. So you could definitely use it at your restaurant if you're going through quite a few briskets for sure. So this looks a lot better. This piece of fat is almost flush now with the meat. Still feels a little bit thick, so I'm going to come in one more time. Try to take out just a little bit more in here. All right, so that feels good to me. Again, I'm feeling it. I can tell how much is in there by feeling the meat. So next thing I want to do is trim off the sides a little bit. Typically with briskets, you will get some discoloration and almost cooked looking meat. That's from the pasteurization when they are processing the beef. So we want to take all of that off. It will be dry. It doesn't look nice. It won't hold any smoke flavor as well. So we want to come and we're just going to trim that basically right off. And this I would probably just throw into the can. You may be able to save a little bit of the fat off of that, but I wouldn't really keep any of the browned meats for doing grinds. Up on the point here, you can see there's some browning as well. So we're just going to take off as little as we can. Okay, that looks great. All right, so I'm going to flip it now. And then to trim the other side here, I want to just make sure it's as even as possible. I want this piece to be one nice even cut. So we're going to come down on the side here. It looks pretty even already, so we'll just make sure we kind of stick to that line. All right, beautiful. Okay, so we have trimmed the sides. Next thing we're going to work on is the flat part. I want to get a 1/4 inch worth of fat along the whole piece. So the end of this flat looks pretty good. It's not a huge amount of fat there, but definitely when I kind of turn it around to the side, you can see there's quite a bit more fat going here. So we want to make sure this is all even with a 1/4 inch of fat. So again, I'm going to do just a little bit at a time. So I don't want to take off too much. If you start to expose the meat, accidentally, that can lead to some dried spots in your brisket and make the cook a little bit less even. So we'll go slowly. Again, especially if this is your first time cleaning a brisket, take your time. Oh, good. Sorry, these earpods don't like to stay in my ears. Okay, so we're cleaning the fat. We're looking pretty good. This side's still pretty good. I'm still pretty thick on the right side here, so we're gonna keep going a little bit more. Okay, good. I can see I'm kind of coming a little close to it there, so we're gonna slow down. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Feels nice and even. Again, I'm feeling the meat. I can feel in here that it's nice and even. Dark spots here we're just gonna trim off. Okay. So now kind of the last part of the brisket for me is that there's always kind of a pocket of fat in the point end. So it'll kind of be like meat, fat, and then meat again on the bottom. So you want to get rid of some of that fat because it's not all going to render down during the cook. Too much won't work. So I'm going to kind of just get my knife in slowly, and we're going to kind of scoop out some of the fat. This one's actually not too bad. Every piece will be different, of course. Some will have way bigger pockets of fat than others. Again, this is probably really nice, usable meat for some beautiful burgers. So don't throw it away. Okay, again, I'm feeling in here. I feel like I've gotten a pretty good amount out. Just maybe a little bit more towards the tip of the point here. Okay, so I think I've cleaned out the fat pretty well. So now the only thing that's left is this kind of little flap here. You don't want to leave anything kind of sticking out or protruding because as you cook, that little bit's going to get dried out. So we will kind of flatten this out a bit. You can also, though, kind of like as you're working, you can kind of squish the meat down a little bit. I know it sounds kind of funny, but you can kind of form it when you're getting ready to cook it, how you want it to go. So I will do a little bit of a cut off of here. Again, I can keep this for my grinds. All right, so now it's more even. Looks good. I'm going to even this end out just a little bit more as well. And then I am just noticing a little bit more of the brown bit on the side here. Okay. So that looks great. So we have a nice, as some barbecues say, aerodynamic brisket. You want the hot air to flow nice and evenly over the brisket as you're cooking it so that you don't get any extra dry spots anywhere. Nothing sticking out, not too much fat. We're at about 1/4 inch like we wanted. So we're looking pretty good. I might just trim the end here a little bit because it's a little bit thin on this side. So I'm going to kind of just come around and do a little bit of a scoop here. And we'll even this side out a little bit too. All right, happy with that. So that's a clean brisket ready to go in the smoker. You could also use something like this for making corned beef. So you'd brine it and then slow simmer it. And the last thing I'm just going to show you quickly is just one other option. So at the store here, we've been selling Brisket Bites. So we've actually been seaming out the point and the flat, so separating them. So you can see at the end, there's a nice piece of fat in between, if you can see. And then I just kind of stuck my knife in there, and we're slowly going to work on separating them. So we're going to pull as this meat hangs, and we're just going to separate the pieces. So you can kind of follow where the meat and the fat go. I think it might have been easier on the top side there. Let me see. So I can see there. We're coming in. All right. So now I have a flat and a point, and all we do now is just cube it up. And we're using a seasoning mixture that definitely has a bit of brown sugar to hopefully resemble more like barbecue sauce. And we put a little bit of cayenne and a little bit of smoked paprika again to kind of give you that smoky type seasoning. So with these, we're then slow cooking them in the oven just a few hours. If I had a fryer here as well, I think it would be great to just throw these in the fryer quickly before you serve them up, just to crisp them a little bit, and then you could sauce them in a barbecue sauce or something to give it even more barbecue flair. But that to me was a great idea, to use some trim bits of your brisket so you're not using it all for stew. Or if you just have briskets that are sitting a little bit longer, you want to have two uses for something, not just smoking it. Do some awesome little brisket bites for an appy. All right, so that's roast cuts. I hope you enjoyed my show today, and I hope you will tune in next time. We'll cut something new. Thanks so much, guys.
Let's go.